Good morning, Liberty. I'm Tim Clinton, and it's a pleasure. Woo! It's a pleasure for me to introduce to you our special guest this morning. Dr. James Dobson is without question one of, if not the world's leading authority on the family. He's also been one of the most powerful influences on and advocates for modern day Christianity. Anybody ever heard of an organization named Focus on the Family? Maybe Adventures in Odyssey? He's now the founder and president of Family Talk. It's a nonprofit organization that produces this radio program, Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk. It's heard on more than 1,300 stations around the country, around the globe. He also has more than 5+ million followers now on social media. He has an earned PhD from the University of Southern California. He holds, catch this, 18 honorary doctoral degrees, you all. He's the author of more than 30 books. By the way, his latest, Your Legacy, The Greatest Gift by Dr. James Dobson, and he'll be out here with this book after Convo this morning. He served as an associate clinical professor of pediatrics at USC School of Medicine for 14 years. He was also on the attending staff of the Children's Hospital at Los Angeles for 17 years in the divisions of child development and medical genetics. He's married to his wife, Shirley. He's going to introduce her in just a moment, you all. And they have 2 grown children, Danae and Ryan, 2 grandchildren. They live in Colorado Springs. Let me say this. Not long ago, Liberty forged a partnership relationship with Dr. Dobson. And we have created the James C. Dobson Center for Child Development, Marriage, and Family Studies right here at Liberty. Now, through online courses, you can get an undergraduate minor and a graduate cognate in child development and parenting, or in marriage and family studies, or in family advocacy through the James C. Dobson Center now. We think that's a really big deal here at Liberty. Dr. Dobson is a true friend, an advocate for Christianity, you all. He's been a bold testimony and witness for Christ his entire life. He stands strong. He's a true friend of Liberty. It wasn't long ago, well, a few years back, he gave the commencement address here, and it was such a joy to have him on Liberty at that time. It's great to have him back. Would you guys help me welcome to this podium Dr. James C. Dobson.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clinton. Thank you for those very warm words of welcome, and it's so good to be back on the campus of Liberty, one of the great universities in the world. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. Dr. Clinton said I was going to introduce my wife, Shirley, to you. I would like to do that now. This is my wife, Shirley, in whom I'm well pleased. Shirley, would you stand? We just celebrated our 56th wedding anniversary. We think it's going to work. We have had such a wonderful marriage, and humor has had a lot to do with it. We have a shared sense of humor. I got to tell you a story about Shirley. A while back, I was invited to be a guest on the Larry King Show for the 15th time through the years. And the Larry King people gave us a rented car, and Shirley had control of it, and she was trying to get to the studio. I was already there, and she was coming through Los Angeles traffic. And in Los Angeles, in order to get on the freeway, you come up a ramp, and there's a red light and a green light for each of the 2 lanes that come up. She was in the left lane, and she was waiting for her lane to turn green, the light to turn green. And she was talking to her dad's doctor. Her stepdad was really dying. He was in great difficulty. So she was very distracted by this. So she's sitting there on this lane waiting for her right to go and get on the freeway. And out of the corner of her eye, she sees the light over here for the other lane turn green, and she thought it was time for her to go, and she banged into the guy in front of her. She really whacked him hard. And she got out, now she's blocking traffic. She got out and she greeted the man who was getting out. She said, "I'm so sorry." I tried to explain what had happened. And they exchanged driver's license. And the guy looked at her driver's license, saw the picture, saw the name, and said, You wouldn't happen to be Shirley Dobson, would you?" And she said, "Well, yes, I'm married to Jim Dobson." He said, "Wow, I've been hit by Shirley Dobson." And he was so thrilled. He said, "Wait till I tell my wife." And Shirley says, "We're going to fix this car. I'm so sorry," and everything. He didn't care about that. He wanted an autographed book. So he drove away with the bumper hanging off, and Shirley was pleased at least that she didn't get carried off to jail or what have you. But we have had many moments like that. She got to Larry King's studio in time. But I tell you something, I was here before on May the 15th, 1993, and loved being here. Dr. Jerry Falwell Sr. Sent a plane for me, brought me here. I spoke at the graduation ceremony that day. That's been 23 years and 3 months. 23 years and 3 months. And I am delighted to be back. And I'm going to do something I have never done before. In 45 years of speaking, I've never done what I'm going to do now. Dr. Clinton has asked me to speak to you on the same subject that I did 23 years ago. Now, there will be no students here who were there on that day, so they won't remember. And there may be some aging professors here who can't remember. So it's, I suppose, not going to matter, but I want to tell you at least the outline of what I said on that day. And it relates to an experience that I had. I want to go all the way back to when I was 18 years of age. I went off to college, went to Point Loma College. Some of you know that school. Shirley and I both went there. And I got there a day early, and so I was walking around the campus, and I was just looking at the place that was going to be my home for the next 4 years. And I went into the administration building, and right there in the center of the building was a big trophy case with all the glass around. And here were all of the evidences of the athletic accomplishment at the school through the years. And I stood there looking at that. Right in the center of the trophy case was a big perpetual tennis trophy. And at that time, tennis was my whole life. I mean, I played tennis 11 months out of the year and absolutely loved it and wanted to go and be on the team at Point Loma. It was called Pasadena College then. And so I stood there, and that trophy had the names of all of the tennis greats going back to 1947. It was based on winning the school tennis tournament. And I stood there and I looked at all those names, and I fantasized that someday, I would get my name on that trophy. And I did play 4 years of tennis, and the last 2 years, I got my name on the trophy as the outstanding student. And I didn't mean that to impress you, but my name was engraved there, and I left there knowing that my legacy was secure, that I had accomplished what I set out to do, and future generations of students would come and stand as I did before that trophy and admire my accomplishments. Well, 15 years ago, 15 years after that, a friend was up on that campus, and he had reason to be around behind that administration building to where the dumpster is, and he found my tennis trophy in the trash. My tennis trophy. Here I am, a legend in my own time, or in my own mind, and he captured that tennis trophy. They threw it away. They just threw it away. I mean, you know, when they're great athletes, they put up a banner and your number's retired. They retired my memory. I mean, they just got rid of it, and he cleaned it up and put a new little man on the top and gave it to me, and I brought it for you to see today. This is my trophy, and it's in my office today, and if you want to come admire it and see it, I welcome you to come. What I learned from that was a very valuable lesson. I learned that if you live long enough, life will trash your trophies. I don't care what they are, whatever your accomplishments are, whatever you think of as the most important thing you have done, sooner or later, it won't matter. I went to high school at a time in South Texas. Wasn't a big high school, but we had the world's fastest human being there. His name was Bobby Morrill. And he ran the 100-yard, they call it meters today, 100-yard dash in 9.3 seconds. Nobody else had ever done that before. Bobby was number one. And he went on to Abilene Christian University, and the Olympics occurred right after that. And he competed in the Olympics in 1956. That's when it occurred. And he won 3 gold medals for the 100, the 220, and the 440 relay. And was honored by Sports Illustrated as being the best, most outstanding athlete or sportsman of the year. Bobby Morrill, cover of Sports Illustrated. And that made him the best athlete of the year, according to Sports Illustrated. And yet, I watched the Olympics this year, and it was all about Usain Bolt. It was not about Bobby Morrill. Bobby Morrill was not even mentioned and wasn't in the previous Olympics, and I don't think he's been mentioned for years. He was a big deal then. He's totally forgotten. In fact, I went to Abilene Christian University to speak. There are 5,000 students there. And this was his school. This is where he was going to school when he won the Olympics. I asked them how many knew of Bobby Morrill. Nobody. Not one person raised their hand. Nobody knew Bobby Morrill, because that was yesterday, and life had trashed his trophies. Who cares now who won the race for the Senate in New Jersey in 1948? Who cares? Nobody could even imagine who it would have been. Who cares who won the World Series in 1933? It doesn't matter. It was long ago, and it has been forgotten. I wonder if there's anybody in this building, 12,000 students here, who remembers the name or knows the name Hugo Echner. Anybody hear his name? Have any idea? If I could offer you $1 million if you could say why he was known, nobody here could do that. I don't plan to do that, but Hugo Echner in 1928 was the best known individual in the world. There was nobody better known than him. He built the dirigibles, the Zeppelins, you know, the devices, I don't even know what it is. It's called a balloon that was filled with oxygen and later helium. He's the one that created that. That was his invention. Big deal. Who cares? Everybody knew Hugo Echner then, but they don't today, because life will trash your trophy sooner or later. If you want to know what will stand the test of time, I think I can tell you. It's what I call the end of life test. Project yourself to the end of your life, which will come one of these days, and when you're there and you're looking back, what will matter to you then? Will it be the plaques on the wall? Will it be the degrees you won? Will it be the building you built that bears your name? Will it be the books you write? Will it be the money you made? Those things will not matter that much to you then, because that's in the past. You know what will matter most in that moment? I can tell you. What will matter most is who you loved, who loved you, and what you did together in the service of the Lord. There's nothing else that will stand the test of time. Let me share one illustration to wrap this up. Let me hear from those of you who know who Pete Maravich was. All right. He is still an icon. Pete Maravich was probably one of the very best, some say one of the best 5 NBA basketball players of all time. When he was in junior high school, people would come to watch him play basketball, and then they'd go home because he was more exciting than the varsity. Pete Maravich's dad was a coach, and he worked on him. Maravich was Showtime before somebody named Magic came along and called it Showtime. He was an unbelievable basketball player. He went to LSU, and he left 43 NC2A records, most of which still stand. He had a per game point average of 44, and he was incredible. He went into the NBA after he graduated from LSU and was the first, they call it $1 million baby. He was the first player to be offered $1 million as a bonus to sign a contract to play in the NBA. But I tell you something about Pete Maravich. He was not a very nice man. He drank too much. He was a womanizer, and he had very few friends, but he was a great basketball player. When he went into the NBA, he left records and he was outstanding, but he was still a pretty miserable human being. And he went through his career, and his knees started bothering him, and he couldn't play anymore, and he retired. And he couldn't go anywhere because everywhere he went, people, tried to get him to give autographs or photographs or what have you. They wouldn't leave him alone, so he stayed in his house. He stayed there for 2 years. alone in his house. His marriage had broken up, and this is what his life had come down to. Now, you can do anything you want with this, what I'm going to tell you now, theologically. All I can tell you is what he said, that one morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, he heard his name. He was in bed asleep, and he heard his name. He sat up in bed, and he looked around and heard it again. He got out of bed, got on his knees, and gave his heart to Jesus Christ. And for the next 5 years, he could not talk to you for 5 minutes without telling you what Jesus had done for him. He was on fire for the Lord. And he wrote a book called Heir to a Dream, where he talked about basketball, talked about his father a lot. And I was doing radio, as I've done for nearly 40 years, and I called him, we got acquainted, and I asked him if he would come and let me interview him for our radio program. He said he'd like to do that. And so we set the date, and he came. And then I did one of the most audacious things I've ever done in my life. I love basketball, but I'm a duffer, and here's one of the best basketball players of all times, and I invited him to play basketball with us in the morning, because we played 3 times a week at 7 o'clock in the morning. And he came that morning, and I introduced him to the other people that were there, and we played a little bit. We played, a pickup game. It was no big deal. But I invited the center from UCLA, the team that had won the NC2A that year, and I invited him to come guard Pete because nobody else could handle him. And so he came and we played. We had a wonderful time. Neat guy. 45 minutes we played. And then everybody stopped to go take a break, get some water, what have you. And I stood talking to Pete on the floor. And I wish I had the conversation recorded, but I said, Pete, you can't give up this game. This has meant too much to you through the years. You just can't give it up. He said, I hate not being able to play. I've only played one time in the last year, which was at the Legends game for the NBA. And he said, I haven't played because I haven't been able to lift a 2-pound ball over my head. I've got a problem with my right shoulder. If it had been the left shoulder, everybody would have had some suspicions as to why. It was his right shoulder. And he said, I just cannot do that. And he said, I love this game and I would love to play again. I said, well, Pete, how are you doing today? And he said, you know what? I just feel great. I've loved playing it. He made moves today I've never seen before. He was an unbelievable player, even with that disability. But he said, I love playing today, and maybe I'm getting better. And with that, I turned to walk away. I turned my back, and for some reason, I turned around and looked just in time to see Pete fall. And he went down hard. His face hit the boards. He didn't break his fall. He just went down on his face. And I thought he was teasing. He had a good sense of humor. By the way, he had a T-shirt on that said, "Looking unto Jesus," because that's what he cared about. That's the only thing he cared about. And I went up to him. I kind of protected myself. I said, "Pete, are you okay?" And he didn't answer. And I saw that he was in a seizure. And I knelt down beside him, and I held his tongue, and I began CPR. And I called for the other guys. One of them, the 7'2" guy that I had invited, came. He worked on the heart. I worked on the upper body and the mouth, and we never got another breath from him. This greatest athlete, one of the greatest athletes in the history of basketball, died in my arms on that day. One of the greatest shocks of my life. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And the media was all over me. Within 30 minutes, they were from all over the place. In fact, this was carried around the world. The whole world was hearing about what had happened to Pete Maravich. They still call me today after all this time. And I was stunned, literally stunned, because this was a man I really wanted to know. And I could have had the very last conversation with him, but I never got that opportunity. They allowed my little team, the guys that were playing basketball, to come to the hospital because he didn't have family there, and allowed us to come into the room where he lay. And we stood around his body, and we prayed for his wife, his 2 children, and the memory of this man. But that was the end of Pete Maravich. I spoke at his funeral. But that day, when I'd left the hospital, I didn't feel like working, and I went home. And I walked in the door, and my son Ryan was there. And he was 17 years old at the time. And I said, Ryan, I guess you have heard what happened today. I want to talk to you about it. Come into my office, will you? And he did. And he sat down, and I said, I want you to understand something. I'm going to say probably the most important thing to you anyone ever has or ever will say. And I ask you not to forget it. What happened to Pete Maravich today was not an isolated tragedy that happens to a man and his family. What happened today is the human condition. This is all of us. This is everybody. Sooner or later, it's everybody. And sooner or later, you'll get this phone call. You're a lot younger than I am, and you very likely will outlive me. And somebody is going to tell you someday that I'm gone. And when that, and by the way, I had a heart attack playing basketball on that same floor about 20 feet away from where Pete died 2 years later. So what I said to him was prophetic. Fortunately, I am totally healthy today, but it didn't look like it at that time. And I had a chance to give myself the end of life test because I looked death squarely in the face. But I said, Ryan, when that occurs, when your moment comes and you hear that I have gone, I have every reason to believe I will be in heaven. And Ryan, this is what I want you to remember. I want you to remember that I care about what happens to you more than anything else. I want you to accomplish your goals. I want you to turn your your potentiality into actuality. I want you to do things with your life. You're gifted, you're smart. You will make a way for yourself. But Ryan, as important as those things are, this is what is most important. Be there on that grand resurrection morning. Be there. I will be looking for you. I'll look all over heaven for you, because that's the only thing that matters, is that you stay true to Christ and that you are found worthy to spend eternity with me and your mom and your family and other friends on that morning. Be there. Those 2 words matter most. And I came all the way to Lynchburg today to say that to you. Be there. Of course it's important to accomplish something in life. It's important to reach your goals. It's important that your expectations will be fulfilled. But in time, life will trash those goals if you live long enough. But be there. That is the only thing that will outlast everything else. And life will not trash that memory and that accomplishment. It's the most important thing in your life. So I leave you with that phrase, be there. And it's been a pleasure being here with you all. It's been 23 years since I was here. Maybe in 23 years I'll be back. God bless you all.